Good evening. I'm Danielle Shenk from the 1011 Now streaming studio. The special session regarding property taxes is well underway at the state capitol. So joining me now is Senior Reporter John Grinvalds. He's sitting over there to talk more about day 4 and another busy day at the capitol.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and so what was today's focus here at the capitol?
Yeah, so all eyes in the Capitol right now are really on LB1. It is a bill where you should really pay attention to the name because it really is number one. This is the focus of the session. This is the decisive piece of legislation. It's Governor Jim Pillen's plan to get to what he's promised, to 50% property tax bill reductions by the end of the session. That's his goal, is to basically cleave it in half, cleave all bills in half, or on average, those bills in half. And it's very ambitious. It's even bolder than his previous plan to get to 40%. And he's wrapped a lot more things into this plan this time. So LB1, it was introduced last Thursday at the beginning of this special session by State Senator Lou Ann Linehan. She's the head of the Revenue Committee. She's the chair of that committee. She's been focused on tax issues for a while now. So this is kind of her baby. She brought forward the LB 388, which failed last legislative session, which was the governor's plan then. She's bringing forward his plan now, and that plan essentially, it's focused on a number of things. One, it looks to increase taxes on so-called sin taxes. So things like cigarettes, spirits, vaping, candy, soda, those kinds of things. There would be an increase in sales tax there, and then there would be a removal of more than 100 sales tax exemptions from everything, ag inputs, industrial inputs, to carpentry and homes for home improvement, all sorts of things across the board there. And then it's got the imposition of hard caps on local spending, so county government, city government, and then it also seeks to get all school funding, K through 12 funding, to the state. So that's a big burden for property taxpayers, is local school funding. Governor Pillen, he wants to shift that all to the state, and that's how he's going to get that local relief. It's just about coming up with money to then do that, right? And that's the sales tax exemption. So that's the plan in a nutshell, and that's where all eyes are right now in the Capitol.
Right, and so testimony began this morning. So what was the overall feel from those who testified?
Right, and testimony is still going right now. That is a testament to how important this is to people, that this is number one. This is the decisive bill. Started at 9:30 in the morning. It is still going right now. At last I checked it could be going until 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock tonight. When I talked to some of the lawmakers on the Revenue Committee, they told me that they were expecting a 12-hour day. So they were buckled in, ready to go. From the start of it, it's all been very civil. That's first to name. Long lines to get in, a totally packed room. Everybody got about 3 minutes to talk. But a lot of, everybody's saying they want to fix this issue of property taxes. They all are addressing this as an issue. They're saying this is a serious issue. The disagreement really is, how do you fix it? A lot of people are saying this is not the way to fix it. And it overwhelmingly, well, I shouldn't say overwhelmingly, there's more opponents than there were proponents. That's what I saw. That's what I heard. That's, even if you look at right now, there are more opponents talking than proponents. A lot of proponents of the bill, they came in talking about their own woes with property tax bills that they're paying, their farms or their homes being priced out of their homes. So a lot of those testimonials, very impassioned speeches on that, how they don't want their kids and their grandkids to flee the state because they can't afford to own homes. And that was really what Pillen was trying to underscore. Governor Pillen, he was the first person to speak on this bill after Linehan introduced it in the hearing. He was invited testimony, and he talked about how this is a problem of brain drain. We're losing kids and we're losing smart people because of the rate of property taxes. So he thinks that his plan is going to basically abolish the brain drain, keep people here. But then on the other side, there's a lot of people who are concerned of the direction. They like addressing property tax bills and trying to cut them, but they aren't convinced that Pillen's plan is the way to go, and they aren't convinced that it's going to bode well for the economy long term.
Yeah, and so what are some of the big qualms that people have with this plan? I know you mentioned a few, being able to stay here in Nebraska, afford their homes, period.
Right. So qualms that people have, obviously, with the how high property taxes are, is the concern of being priced out of their homes. But then the qualms on the other side of people having issue with the bill, and you'll see this all across the board. This is not just a left issue, a left wing issue, or a right wing issue. This is progressives, liberals, moderates, conservatives, fiscal conservatives, so all come out against this bill because they see it as various either regressive forms of taxation, shifting it to sales taxes, or that it is itself a tax increase. That's what some conservatives have argued, that they say, hey, look, Republicans, we don't raise taxes. This would be one of the largest tax increases in Nebraska history. Of course, what Pillen's team would say is, look, the largest tax increase is every year that the property valuations go up, and so property taxes rise. That's the tax shift. That's what they say is the tax shift. But then folks against the bill say it's a tax shift onto sales taxes, which oftentimes hurts lower income folks more than it hurts wealthier folks, because it's on goods that everyone needs. It's not on necessarily food or anything like that, but you're talking diapers, you're talking services that people rely on. Mm-hmm. So, right, the people who have lower incomes, they're going to be affected by it. Some folks with the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce, the Omaha Chamber of Commerce, they came out against it today, saying that this is bad for industry. Taxes on ag inputs, on industrial inputs. This is another, the Farm Bureau, the Nebraska mm-hmm. Farm Bureau, Mark McHarg spoke today, and he's been an ally of Pillen since the beginning of Pillen's political, gubernatorial career here. He's saying these ag inputs, taxing ag inputs, it's going to make it harder for Nebraska farmers to compete with farmers around the area, mm-hmm. because no other states in the area, they say, have those taxes on ag inputs. So that's a big problem for a lot of people right now. They're kind of warning that this is not good for business, that this is not good for agriculture, that this is not good for a lot of industries. Spirits, liquor. Mm-hmm. Folks in that industry have sounded the alarm bells that this is going to make it so much more expensive to sell, to produce these things, that it's gonna really hit the kneecaps mm-hmm. of these industries. And then there's also folks concerned about the local spending caps, concerned about if there are times of economic turmoil, what that could mean for them. And then there are folks in school boards who are unsure what it would mean for the state to assume all of the K through 12 spending. So a lot of questions that a lot of people have, mm-hmm. and a lot of concern a lot of people have. And again, the proponents or the opponents seem to outweigh the proponents today. And they're still speaking going into the night here.
Yeah, and I mean, you've been following this special session even before it got started, when they were lining out dates, saying that it was going to happen, things like that, and you've spoken to a lot of senators as well. So, I mean, how likely is Pillen's plan to pass?
That's a great question, and that is the big question, right? That is why we're all here, right? That's why the 49 gathered is Pillen said, you got to get my plan through. I go back to a great quote that State Senator Jacobson gave to me, where it's a saying I had never heard before, but it's now become part of my vocabulary, where he said, you order a steak and you hope for a hamburger, right? Mm-hmm. For Jacobson, it is, we want this big thing, and Pillen, we want this huge transformative change. Maybe at the end of the day, it's just going to be a much smaller, but somewhat a meal, at least, a hamburger. Not a steak, but a hamburger, right? That is what some senators are hoping for. Some senators are hoping for the whole thing. Linehan is confident and saying it's now or never. We got to do this. People are fleeing the state. This is a crisis. But it's a hard road to 33 votes. And that's the important number, because 33, that's the filibuster-proof majority. You need 33 votes to break any filibuster. It doesn't seem like they have that right now. I haven't done a vigorous counting of the votes mm-hmm. today, but from the talks I've had with state senators, not a lot of people are confident that it can reach that threshold. Now, Pillen says, without a shadow of a doubt, it'll pass with bipartisan support with more than 33 votes. But on this specific plan that we're seeing right now, I have not seen the buy-in necessary for it to get to the 33. It's possible that as it gets worked through committee, as it comes onto the floor with some tweaks and changes, that it might reach that threshold. But right now, it doesn't seem like it's going to pull in the 33 from the talks that I've had with state senators as it stands. But of course, that is the game here. Is it had its hearing today, and now it's the committee to decide. Linehan, who introduced it, she's the head of this committee. She gets to she and the other folks in the committee get to decide what they kind of do to tweak it before they send it onto the floor, if they even send it onto the floor. Because, of course, a lot of bills end up dying in committee. You wouldn't think that Linehan, being the one who introduced it and being the chair, that it would die in committee. So I think we could see it come onto the floor. But the shape that it will take on the floor, that's really uncertain right now, if it will be this exact same thing or if there are going to be some backdoor deals, some people working on trying to get to that 33 and finding out what they can do to the bill to get it to that point.
Right, and so LB1 is just one bill of 81 that have been introduced for this special session, a record number for that. And so, I mean, this special session is going to last a few more days, although time is ticking. I mean, our tax dollars are paying for this. So what's next here for the next couple of days?
Well, that's a great question, too. Like you said, it is a record. From what I'm hearing, a record for special sessions, 81 bills and 24 constitutional amendments for a total of 105, items to consider here. That is pretty unprecedented in Nebraska history. A lot to work on. And in fact, that is pushing the Revenue Committee to now, they're going to be meeting on Saturday. They're going to be working, having a hearing on Saturday to fit in all this, because all of those 81 bills have to have a public hearing by Sunday. So that's what really is coming this week. It's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. What I've heard from the Speaker of the legislature, John Arch, is that these are going to be check-in days starting at 9 a.m., and then it's just going to be committee hearings. There's not going to be a lot of activity that's happening on the floor of the George Norris Legislative Chamber. It's going to be in committees, and those are all public. You can watch those streams. You can even go there and speak on these bills. But that's where we're heading, is into committee. And then coming into next week, all of those things will start coming out of committee, and that's where it'll get to the floor debates. But the rest of the week is just check-in days, negotiating in committee, hearings, testimonies, those kinds of things. And then on Friday, Speaker Arch said that he'll be sharing more of an outline of what's to come in the weeks to come. And like you said, the clock is ticking. There is no end technically for a special session except for the calendar year, the start of the actual session. But right, as you said, there's taxpayer dollars that are being spent right now, and that is in play. But Linehan has said, chair of the Revenue Committee, introducer of the most crucial piece of legislation, she says, as long as it takes. She's ready to go for a month, for 2 months, if necessary, because she sees this as a serious crisis. She says we can't wait anymore. This is when it has to happen. So who knows how long this will actually go, but we should know more about what's to come in the weeks to come by Friday of this week.
Awesome. Well, as we go to wrap things up, is there anything else that you want to add about day 4 here today?
No, there's not much more, just that it was quite a turnout today in the Revenue Committee. So many people from so many different walks of life, and that's always amazing to see, is people engaging with the democratic process in that way. It wasn't just, paid lobbyists. It is people who've taken time out of their day, who might have taken off work, have come to the Capitol on a very warm day, by the way.
Thank goodness it was inside.
Have battled through the quagmire that is parking at the Capitol, right? It's very hard to actually park at the Capitol, to come in there and express their concerns or their hopes, and to talk through what they're feeling about this bill, for or against. And that's always, it's uplifting to see so many people engaged in that process in such a civil way, right? To take hours and hours out of your day. You saw just people, lined up in seats basically, where it was kind of like the front row was going to speak next, just snaking through the entire chamber, knowing they were only going to get to speak for 3 minutes, and then they could get asked questions, but they only had 3 minutes before the the light flashed red and they were told they had to end their remarks, they just took 8 hours off their work day to come here and do that. And that's impressive to see. I would like to see more of that engagement in the hearings to come. There's a lot of interesting bills coming up, a lot of controversial bills coming up. One that was introduced recently, recreational marijuana legalization and using that for property tax relief. This has been an issue that people have floated for a while now. People have talked about maybe putting it on the ballot. This is going to be the senators who've introduced it claiming, this is a way to address property taxes and also to reduce the level, prison population, the overcrowding in prisons. So a lot of interesting bills here. That's just one example of many, many more in this haystack of 81 bills, right? So I hope that more people engage with this process, watch 1011, but also watch the actual streams and give their comments and make their voice heard.
Right. And so, we have been covering this and will continue to cover the special session. So thanks so much for joining me, John.
Thank you so much for having me.
For more news and updates on the special session, you can visit our website and follow us on all of our social media platforms, from our newsroom to wherever you are. We'll see you on the next stream.